Well, thank you so much to Mark Bryan for joining us today. We are getting ready to celebrate World College Radio Day, which is this Friday, October 2nd. So that is super exciting. And if you didn't know, he was a DJ on our station a little bit back in the day. So today it's me. My name is Ben, and we're joined by Amanda from WUSC as well. And of course, Mark Bryan. So thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I was a DJ all 4 years of college, actually. And yeah.
That is so awesome. I know you're not from South Carolina originally. You're from Maryland. So how did you get down to South Carolina in the first place?
Well, I heard about the journalism school at South Carolina when I was looking at colleges, and I visited like 4 or 5 different schools. And to be honest with you, WUSC was one of the main factors of why I chose South Carolina, because it had such a cool college station, and I knew I wanted to do that, to be a college DJ. I was also into sportscasting at the time, and I just thought that the journalism school was kind of the broadcasting journalism program at South Carolina was where I wanted to get my degree. So that's where I made the choice. And yeah.
So you said that WSC is something that brought you to USC. How did you hear about us? Was it on the tour or?
It was when I was touring the university as a, high school, I guess, junior or senior. And I visited the very station you're sitting in right now. And I remember the closet area across the room across from the booth was full of vinyl at the time, and they've moved it since, but you guys still have a ton of the vinyl that we had back in the day. And but I saw that when I was in high school, and CDs weren't even the format for radio yet. So like when I was DJing, it was still vinyl, which was cool.
That's crazy to think about. Yeah, we still have the CD library like 10 feet away from me right now. Rooms filled wall to wall with CDs and vinyl.
Yeah, the CD format sort of for radio kicked in, like, I guess like my senior year or something like that. I mean, CDs were on the market and everything, but they didn't really kick in as the radio format till my senior year for college.
So I know you said you were a DJ here. What was your DJ name and show?
Styles Bitchley. And I started off like 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. on like Thursday night or something, Friday morning of my freshman year, and then just slowly kind of worked my way up until senior year. I had Friday afternoon from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and I called it the 3 happy hours with Styles Bitchley. And I got this bar in 5 Points to underwrite my show as the 3 happy hours. It was called JD Stickies, and they would play my show in the bar, and then people would go down and hang out at Stickies and drink and call me to request songs. So and it worked out pretty well. Like I had a little following going for a while, and this is the 3 happy hours, Styles Bitchley. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, most importantly, and I know this is probably one of your questions, but like it was just like a pivotal time for me musically, and the way it inspired me musically, and not just me, like our whole friend group, because part of the Dean and Darius from Hootie and the Blowfish worked at JD Stickies, that bar I was talking about, and even when it wasn't my show, we were playing music there a lot of the time, and my friend group, we found a lot of new music during that time, and the way I found a lot of new music was through DJing at WSC, and so I became a source for a lot of my friends and stuff. And Darius worked at Sounds Familiar, which was a retail record store at the time, and that was his source, for finding a lot of music. And we would all just come in and share it, and so I don't know, like I can't say enough about how much music I learned from being up there where you are right now.
I was gonna say that's the same for me. Like my music taste and knowledge has grown exponentially these past 3 years as a DJ, especially with the music library being a source, just going in there, spending hours, like looking for a weird name and putting it in the boombox or whatever. I was just wondering if any of the bands that you learned about really stuck out to you that you remember now. Is there like a favorite that you found with WSC?
I wouldn't ever pick one favorite, but the bands that When I was DJing at WSC, it was the time where alternative music was actually on college radio, and before it became part of the rock mainstream. And so REM really was the band that paved that when I was coming up. And then another band that was big with that was Replacements at the time. A lot of people still talk about the Replacements, who were just amazing. And they were two of my favorites, but there were so many, and a lot that I think still had a big impact. You just don't know their names as much, like a band like Husker Du, for instance. And there's a guy in Husker Du named Bob Mould, who was a songwriter who Dave Grohl just did a whole live performance thing with, and all that. And Dave Grohl's my age, and all that was music that was inspiring us at the time. Husker Du and Replacements was like punk, sort of made its way to mainstream through alternative music, and we watched it happen, and we played the music of it. And so there's just hundreds and hundreds of bands. Sometimes it's just one song. A band would put out one song, but everybody would cover it and play it at parties or whatever. So, I mean, it was like a scene that happened all through the 80s where you watched rock music, you watch the alternative side of rock music, like, make its way up to the mainstream all through the 80s. And, it's in the Hootie and the Blowfish sound, believe it or not, if you listen, we became more mainstream than a lot of bands from our time, but you can hear it. You can hear that the influence of me being a college DJ and Dean, our bass player, listening to a lot of the same music too.
I know REM got their start in Athens and right there with WUOG at the University of Georgia as well. Sort of, I feel like college radio has always sort of been like on the forefront of what's really about to be that next big shift. And I think it really is exciting that we do
still feel that way. Like I listen to the station still when I'm in Columbia, and you guys, I mean, I'm still getting turned on to all this new music that I would never hear otherwise. And you're still that format in the market where you're the place you can go to hear something different, but also something, new. And it was the same way when I was there, and it's important. And I wish it was embraced more everywhere. Still, I think people are finding different ways to find their music now, but I also see you guys adapting and making sure that you have an online presence and all that, which is so key. So, I mean, I'm really happy that you guys are sitting here talking to me today and still have this whole thing rolling, because it's great. It really, it affects a lot of people and inspires a lot of people.
It's crazy actually that you mentioned Husker Du and like Bob Mould and everything, because we actually got his album in last year, the Sunshine Rock album. I think that's what it was called.
Cool.
Or that's his song on it, because I remember playing it on my show. So like that's one of my favorite things about college radio is not only is it new and different, but you still have the nostalgic feel of like we play like the Replacements or bands like that. And I think that's one of the things people love about us, because it almost feels homey, like you find the new things, but they're also the things that brought you to it in the first place, if that makes
sense. That's right. And you mentioned it earlier, just going back and digging through stuff. Like you might hear that so-and-so co-wrote a song with, like, you might really like a song by a current band, but you might hear that it was produced or co-written by blah, blah, blah. And so you go back and find that person's music and that sort of thing. And I used to do a lot of that too. Like that's how I found out about them at Big Star, because the Replacements were singing about Big Star. I'm like, who's that? So you go find Big Star, see what that's all about. Yeah. And the list goes on and on and on. So that's cool.
So I know one of my other favorite parts about the station is just the people at the station are super sick and cool, and you learn so much from them. I just wanted to know if you had a memory that really sticks out to you about your time at the station, or any fun things you did with the people here.
Yeah, we had such a great group of people. I mean, it was cool because we were all into it, came from different walks of life into it, and came together through the music. It wasn't like the people I was normally hanging out with. I ended up hanging out with them through the radio station. And we would do these shows at Rockefeller's at the time, which is now Jake's. And it was like the venue at the time. It had a killer stage and everything. And national acts from all over would come play Rockefeller's. And WUSC, which if it was an act that we were playing, it was in our rotation at all, we would like sponsor the show. And so those were my favorite moments. Like all the DJs and all the staff, all the board members would all come down and meet at Rockefeller's to go see like the Neighborhoods or Black Flag, or like there's just so much cool music. Red Hot Chili Peppers' first show in Columbia was at Rockefeller's, and I'm sure that WUSC sponsored it, you know. But, you know, so like that's my moment that I remember the most is those radio sponsored shows at the clubs.
I think it's really hard right now, just with everything going on with the coronavirus, that we don't have that same
I
opportunity
know.
now. And it's just
Trust
so,
me.
it's so upsetting to me. Like, I know I was going to be going back to Atlanta for Music Midtown this month. And I mean, it's been a tradition for me and my friends to go. And I mean, it sounds stupid. And she's kind of a big name now, but I mean, like, that's how I found like Dua Lipa and like a few other people like that. Like sort of just past their success on college radio and more going top 40. But how do you feel like you're going to kind of adapt into that post-COVID era?
Yeah. So I'm releasing music right now. Like next month will be my first single for this new album that'll come out in April. And I'm asking myself that very question. How am I going to release this music without necessarily touring, you know? And obviously for strategic and well-placed like Facebook Live and Instagram Live are certainly ways to get the word out and to sort of play to a large crowd online. But short of that, you know, I don't know. I've seen some of my friends go into a schedule where they're playing on stage it every weekend, that kind of thing. That doesn't really interest me because I think that you have to keep reinventing yourself every week. I don't know if I want to get into that mode. So I don't really know the answer yet. Like, here's one thing I think for sure is that people are still going to want to go see live music. So while it might not be as early as next spring, I think that people are you're going to be able to start playing shows again, and people are going to start going to shows again. Now, will it be a mixture between what's going on right now during COVID and then a new post-COVID world? Yeah, probably. There'll probably be a lot more people, a lot more artists doing stuff online based on what they're doing now, and then just sort of translating that into the future. But I still believe there's going to be a strong return to live music.
Yeah, I agree. I think like Instagram Live, Facebook Live is going to get really, really big. Like you said, that's what we do right now for our concerts. We do a bunch of Instagram and Facebook Lives. I just wanted to know how you got into music in the first place. I know we talked about how you discovered more music here at WSC, but what really got you into it? Was your family musical, or is it something you stumbled on?
Yeah, I guess when I was growing up, there was, you know, I would always hum along to songs and try to figure out what they were about. I love the stories of the songs and that kind of thing. And then somewhere when I was around like 14, I heard My Generation by The Who. You know, talking about my generation, and there was this energy in the song that I hadn't felt even anything, like even the Beatles stuff. I just hadn't felt this sort of raw energy and I, from that moment on, I just picked up guitar and decided that, or I didn't even make a conscious decision. I wanted to be able to share that same energy that I was feeling. I'm like driven to still. You know, I'm like 53 now. So just like 40 years of that, of just like, you know, this is what I want to do. I feel this energy from music, and I feel the ability and the need to sort of share that energy with other people. And over the years, I got more and more involved in creating my own music instead of feeling the energy through other people's music. And sometime around, you know, right after the end of college, you know, we all the whole band, we made the decision that this is what we wanted to do. And we decided to become songwriters. And at this point, I'm just 53, and I believe my best song's still ahead of me. You just try to keep getting better at your craft, just like anybody with anything they do. I consider it a craft and a gift. And so, you know, I don't know, I've felt it for a long time.
Did you ever sneak any of the songs you made on air?
The very first recording we ever made, I played it, and I called Dean and Darius and like, make sure you turn this on right now, because I'm playing our song, you know. And I didn't act. I pretended like it wasn't me. I was just like, yeah, there's this new band, Hootie and the Blowfish, and I mean, because my name was Styles Bitchley, so only people that knew would have known, you know. And so I played our music as if it was not my band. Just snuck it in there. Yes, I did that one time.
So I know not only WSC, but you're also really involved with the Cistern Yard at College of Charleston. You helped start that, I think, in 2001, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I haven't recently been involved, but the students are running it well, and I did help start it. Yeah.
Why is it so important to you for college kids in particular to get involved with music?
Well, when I moved to Charleston and I realized that they didn't have a version of WUSC, I was like, wow, they're really missing out. I mean, here's a really hip music town with a bunch of, acts that had come out of Charleston, Jump Little Children at the time, and the list goes on and on since then. But like, it was already a hip music town, and it didn't have an indie or college radio station. And so I met a woman at the college that worked in the documentary and film department, and I just asked her one day, like, how come they don't have a college radio station here? She's like, well, they should, and I don't know. And she's like, there's this one of my students is writing a dissertation about it, and she is saying the same thing as you, like it's just unbelievable they don't have one, and she's doing her whole paper about it. So I'm going to put you two in touch. And so this, I can't even remember her name. It's just this young lady and I at the time just said, okay, let's dig in. And we figured out all the things you need to do, like wrote up a charter and and organized all the students who were interested, and like 30 to 50 kids showed up at the first meeting, that kind of thing. And we sort of based it around WUSC's charter. Because that was the only thing I knew at the time. And I called whoever the station manager was at the time and asked for that information. And we literally based it off of WUSC and set it up for College of Charleston. Now, WUSC was lucky to have an FM frequency in place that was grandfathered in after Clear Channel bought all the radio stations. But College of Charleston did not have that luxury. And so they could not get an FM frequency. There was one that the campus had access to, but it only had like a 2-mile radius. So for the first 2 years or so, they went guerrilla, and you could hear the station downtown. And just across the harbor where I lived in the old village, like if you parked your car on the right side street, you could catch it, But that didn't last for long. And then they had to go online. I went to the office of Fritz Hollings, Senator Fritz Hollings, whose wife went to College of Charleston, and begged and pleaded with him to give College of Charleston Radio an FCC license. And he gave me my hands are tied, Mark, there's nothing I can do, deal. So, I did everything I could to try to help get an actual FM frequency, and it just never happened. There's every few years, there's a chance to reapply for it. And so I've always encouraged the station managers to keep up with that, to hopefully apply for the new one, but I haven't kept track of when the new one is. But anyway, in the meantime, several students have kept it going over the years very well. And I haven't looked recently, but if you look on their calendar, I mean, all of the slots are full, and there's kids doing shows online every semester. So, and the times where I've listened online, I'm hearing just as cool of playlists as I hear at WUSC. So, I mean, it's a very functional thing. It has this double function. One, it's a launching ground for students to go in and say, if I wanted to do some sort of job in media, in radio, and you can learn that job through college radio. So that's one huge part of it. But the other part of it is the music side. What it does for the artists and what it does for the music community is huge. You create a scene, and it's viable for artists, having a scene, and the community loves it. And so those two things are happening at the same time through college radio. Could anything, I mean, so such a win-win. Every single college, every market in America should have one if they don't. And now radio is just sort of falling by the wayside, and government doesn't care anymore and all that. And so it's going to be really hard to ever recreate that again. You just have to do it online now. And what I see you guys doing online is very encouraging.
I think us in particular, we have a lot of people from all over the country, and we only broadcast about 3 counties. So I would say half of our listeners are probably online from everywhere. We get a lot of interaction on our social medias, which is always good. And we recently started using our YouTube more. So I think our online presence is growing a lot. And like you said, I think it's really important right now to reach like more of an audience.
I think everything with COVID and us having to, kind of close up campus has really kind of forced us to reevaluate. I mean, it's not when campus is closed, we can't come into the station and sit at the board and do a normal show. So I think the beauty of having things move more online is that we are making it more accessible. And like in the case of College of Charleston, I mean, if they're an online station, then they can set up shop wherever and they can log in from wherever and still have be able to chart and still contribute to the community and the scene. And I think that's just so important. And that's honestly one thing that I really love about this station. And there's still more work for us to do going forward, but I think we're kind of starting in the right spot.
Yeah. It's almost like I picture, so when it was FM radio, college radio is competing against commercial stations, obviously, and you don't even get close to any share of the market really, but you get the people who care and want to listen, they go find you on that left side of the dial, and it's the same thing now where you're competing against people who are basically listening to playlists these days. I think a lot of people is where they're going for music, and it's like, how can WUSC's rotation just be, or your schedule just become like someone else's, like another playlist people could go to listen to. That's almost the way I envision it being able to compete in this day and age. You almost have to just feel like you're a playlist, even though you're a live radio station rolling with DJs all day long. Yeah. But you're also just another selection. Somebody can go for a playlist. I don't feel like doing my rock playlist today. I'm going to do WUSC today, that kind of thing. Who knows how we get there, but that's how people are finding music now.
I think that's also one of our kind of major draw-ins is that none of our music is top 40. We're like kind of peculiar in that way. So people pick our station to find new music, not just to hear something that they've heard. So that's kind of like their new music playlist in a sense, like you said.
Exactly. And I want to help college radio. I want to help market that for college radio, just so it doesn't go away. Because as I was saying earlier, I feel like it's vital.
I mean, as you were mentioning, it does so much for the communities, but it does so much for the DJs as well. I mean, stepping into the station and into sort of the executive staff and public affairs in particular, I feel like I've learned so much in terms of being able to put on these events for the public and be able to connect with other people about music and set up interviews and do the kind of thing that we're doing right now. And it's really an experience that has so far in my 2 years here defined USC for me, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
There you go, man. That's it. Well, that's good to hear. I can't say enough about it. It's like the resume level of it is so good. It's almost like having a job while you're at school,
Now I know that obviously one of your passions is educating people about music and everything, and I recently learned about Carolina Studios. And I wanted to know if you want to talk a little bit about that, because as someone from Charleston, it's not something I really knew about, and I think it's like a great program that more people should learn about.
Right. Well, it started with the idea of the kids who were in schools that were misbehaving and just not showing up and not succeeding. A lot of them could relate to music more than they could sort of the topics in school. And so I had a friend who was a social worker in the schools, and his idea was to make music somehow an incentive for kids to come to school. It's a great idea. Like, he makes a lot of sense there. A lot of kids who don't care about math and maybe aren't on the football team or whatever, or don't care about what they're learning in school. Why should I come? Why should I come? So it's like, if there's a large majority of kids who relate to music, then give them a reason to come to school through music. And so it was his idea, and he and I worked it into an after school program and started a board and everything. And that was about 20 years ago. And then over the last 12, 15 years or so, we really started building it out. And we started with a location downtown in Charleston where kids could come after school to learn how to record music and record their songs and that kind of thing. And that location still exists. But over the years, we've added a mobile studio, like a mobile component. It's a school bus that we converted into a recording studio, and we take it to the schools, to different schools every day, and kids come out and work on the bus in the after school hours, and basically make tracks and make beats. And there's a microphone booth in the back, and they can sing or rap or whatever they do. And we have instructors that are employees of the organization that teach the kids how to do it, and help them make a CD or a thumb drive to leave with, or send themselves a link to it or whatever, so they can play it for their friends and their parents. And it's quite a rewarding experience, especially the first time you do it. If a kid goes in and makes a beat and raps over it for the first time, they go, wow, I have a voice, or I have an ability here, or something I can do. It's kind of like the same thing we were saying with DJing earlier, and how it helps establish that as a form of employment. It's the same thing with Carolina Studios. You go in and you make a beat, and you realize, wow, if you're good at songwriting, you go, wow, I can actually write material. Or if you're good at the engineering side of it, you go, okay, wow, I could actually work in a studio. And so it's a skill. And again, it's twofold, just like college radio is, where it's a skill kids are learning, but they're also creating music and starting that creative side of things, where who knows where that is going to go. So
I think it's just super important to be able to have that opportunity for them to, find that voice, and to realize that their voice matters and will be heard, and is something that really matters to them and to their community as well. So what do you think one of your biggest takeaways from working with WUSC was, just sort of as we kind of get to the end of our session?
Sports, I grew up with sports. Sports is competitive. And when I started being passionate about music, I didn't feel anything competitive about it. And it's sort of like when I was doing college radio, like it didn't matter what the style of music was. I just kept finding good songs and sounds, like, oh, somebody made that's a really cool recording, and that's a really cool voice, and that's a really cool guitar sound, and that's a really cool, and I just found all these different styles and songs and sounds, and it didn't matter whether it was pop or something that everybody liked, or it was commercial or whatever, or viable. Like, none of those words ever came into my mind. And then as I got into the music business and became an artist, and you realize that it is competitive on the consumer side and the marketing side. But there's something about college radio where that none of that ever exists. It's not even on the table, and so you learn to explore musically and creatively, and that's just irreplaceable. And I can still do that, and I do on my own time. But when you're a DJ, you have to do it once a week. And so, I haven't done that since then. I haven't done it once a week since then. And so I was hot on my game back then. I knew so much new music, and I still find a lot of great new music just out of necessity, because that's who I am and I want to. But when you have to do it each week to put together a show, you really get good at it. And so I think that's my biggest takeaway.
How did you know that you made it big, how did you?
Well, there's this great old story, and it's true. And it's probably, like, this is the like that moment that you could point to if there was one. I mean, there really isn't one, but this is a cool one. So we had a show at the Township scheduled here in Columbia. They're in Columbia. I'm in Charleston right now, but you guys recall. So there was a show scheduled at the Township, and we got booked on Letterman that same night, on Dave Letterman, The Late Show. And so it was like our album had just come out, and we hadn't been on national TV for anything yet. And all of a sudden we get booked on The Late Show with Letterman, and it's huge deal. Like, we have to go do it. And so our label, Atlantic Records, at the time was like, can you cancel the show? We're like, hell no, it's sold out. Like, Township, for the first time, we sold out the Township, 3,000 people are coming to see us. And which was, probably the biggest crowd we ever played to at the time. And so our label goes, okay, well, we're gonna send you guys the jet, and we basically went up to New York in the morning, did the Letterman show. We finished taping at 6:30 p.m. or whatever. Got hustled into these cars, taken to the airport, put on the Time Warner jet, flown back to Columbia. Police escort from the airport in Columbia to the township. And then we play the township, sold out show to the home crowd. Everyone's so proud. And all go to the bars and 5 Points that night and watch ourselves on the Late Show with David Letterman. So, and David Letterman holds the CD up to the camera before he announces us, and before we play Hold My Hand, and he goes, if you don't own this CD, something's wrong with you. And the next day, we had been selling like, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 copies a week across the country because of FM radio. And the next week after Letterman said that, we sold 17,000 copies of our album. And it just started to climb from there. And, you know, so that's your moment, I guess, or one of them.
That is definitely a moment.
Yeah.
Huge moment. That is incredible.
Yeah, it's a hell of a night. That was a hell of a night.
Oh, that sounds like it. I can't even imagine anything like that. That must have just been so surreal.
It was in September, so it was September of '94. So there you go.
Well, I did have one more question. This one doesn't have much to do with college radio, but I just personally wanted to know. So I know you helped create Live at the Charleston Music Hall. I just wanted to know how you got the idea from that, and if there was a specific performance that you remember. I just watched the Parker Millsap, and it was amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing. Did you watch his episode?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
The interview was good. You were on the other side of this.
Yeah. So I part of using my broadcast journalism degree from University of South Carolina was that I always wanted to do some sort of production like that. And the owner of the Charleston Music Hall came to me and he goes, Mark, I have this beautiful room. It's a restored train station, you know, and it's a theater. And he's like, people use it for special events, but he's like, I'm not a promoter, so I'm not going to start doing shows there. So I just don't know what to do with the room. And his name's Mike Bennett. And I was like, Mike, the Bennett Hotel that's in Charleston now, that's him. He owns the Charleston Music Hall. And so I said, Mike, I'm not a promoter either. You know, I'm not going to start doing a bunch of shows, selling tickets at like, that's not what I do. I was like, but I could make it, being that it's a historical room and everything, and it sounds really good in there. I was like, we could make a TV show from there. And he's like, love it, go for it. So I took the idea to SCE TV there in Columbia, and they were like, Mark, that's a great idea. That they were like, PBS is looking for more programming like Austin City Limits. It's such a big hit, and not enough people are doing that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I got the go ahead from ETV and the go ahead from the owner of the hall. So now it was up to me, and it took me a couple of years of kind of figuring out how to do it right. And I got some partners involved that helped me make the first two pilots. I didn't want to, lose a bunch of money in doing this. So I was like, how do I do this where, and you get sponsors, you know, and that they didn't teach you that part at broadcast journalism school. I mean, they taught you about it, but they didn't teach you how to do it. So I had to figure that out on my own. And I went out and just into the community and had friends and worked with enough people till I got them interested in this. Hey, like, we have Sam Bush coming in and Edwin McCain coming in to do the first two shows. Would you put some money behind it and we'll put your name on it, that kind of thing. And finally I got like $20,000, enough to do a pilot. And we did 2 shows in one night. That way you could get like 2 shows for the cost of one, you know. And we did Edwin McCain, who's my old friend from upstate here in South Carolina, and Sam Bush, who was like a 16-time Grammy-winning mandolin and fiddle player. And those 2 shows, you know, went really well, and we filmed them, and it looked great. And so we were then able to go get more sponsors to do all of season 1. And we ended up with 11 episodes, and they aired all over the country, 50 plus markets, you know, on PBS. And so now we're in the process of trying to figure out how to do season 2. The pandemic obviously took this year away from us, but now we're looking at, okay, how do we do it in the current climate, and could we do it next year? And so we might try to shoot season 2 next year. We'll see.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to that. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I would highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, thank you. The easiest way to find it is to just go to pbs.org and you can search Live at the Charleston Music Hall, and all the episodes come right up. And you can also go to SCETV or ETV and search it there too. So, I just want to let everyone know that I am releasing an album in April called Midlife Priceless. It's my 4th solo album, and it is 12 tracks that I had written leading up to the last Hootie album, just some of the ones that didn't make it to the Hootie album. And they were too good to leave on the cutting room floor, and I think it's the best album I've ever made. So tune in and find me on Instagram and on Facebook and on Spotify and Apple Music, wherever you get your music, and play me on WUSC.
Definitely will.
All right. I'm going to start spreading the word. So find me.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to it. And that first single is out next month, you said.
Yeah, it'll be out next month.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you guys, man.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, keep it rolling.
Absolutely.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good one.